This last Sunday, as we made our way through the next section in Galatians, Paul's letter to the churches in Galatia, we talked about reaching other people with the hope and the message of Jesus. And we gleaned two things from this part of the letter. The first one was to be open to opportunities, and the second was to be motivated by love. But there's one more point, there's one more thing I thought it would be good to keep in mind as we try to reach others with the hope and the message of Jesus that we can get from this part of the letter that I wasn't able to cover on Sunday. And it comes out of verse 12 in chapter 4, where Paul wrote this. He says, "I beg you, brothers and sisters, become as I am, for I also have become as you are." So what does Paul mean by this? What does Paul mean when he says, become as I am, become like me? Well, remember the context. Paul had just spent 3 chapters arguing with the Galatian church from experience, from the Bible, arguing that they are free from the law, that they are free from trying to earn their salvation by adherence to the law, that they are free from guilt that comes from the law, that the law was meant to bring them to Christ, and it was meant to help them see their need and then cling to Christ. And so it's likely that when he says, become as I am, he's saying, become free like I am. Become free from guilt. Become free from the law. Become free from the burden of having to be enough in the eyes of God. That's what Jesus offers us. So he says, become as I am, for I also have become as you are. So then what does he mean when he says, I have become as you are? Well, this is a reference to Paul's strategy, his missionary strategy. Whenever he came to a new area, a place where nobody knew about Jesus yet and what he had done for the sins of the world on the cross, he had a strategy. And what he would do is he didn't roll into town and say, okay, you guys all need to turn and follow Jesus exactly like I do. Okay, Paul was a Jewish convert, a Jewish Christian from Tarsus. He didn't say, you guys need to all look like me and act like me and live like a Jewish convert to Christianity from Tarsus. No. He was, as Tim Keller puts it in his book on Galatians, culturally flexible. First, what he did was he embodied whatever culture he entered into. He lived like they lived. He entered into their life. That way he could embody what it looked like to trust in and follow Jesus. So when he says, I became as you were, he's just referring to his strategy of what he did to reach people. He puts it really clearly in 1 Corinthians 9 when he says, although I am free from all and not anyone's slave, I have made myself a slave to everyone in order to win more people. To the Jews, I became like a Jew to win Jews. To those under the law, like one under the law, though I myself am not under the law, to win those under the law. To those who are without the law, like one without the law, though I am not without God's law, but under the law of Christ, to win those without the law. Verse 22, he says, to the weak, I became weak in order to win the weak. I have become all things to all people, so that I may by every possible means save some. So he's reminding the Galatians, like, hey, when I came into town, I didn't expect you to take on my culture, to take on exactly the way I follow and trust in Jesus. First, I became like you were. Why? In order to win you to Christ. Why? Because the message of the hope of the gospel, it transcends cultures. It can be lived out in every context. And so he was flexible enough to embody what it looked like to trust in and follow Jesus in their context. And that's what I want us to keep in mind as well as we aim to reach others and make disciples of Jesus. We should do the same. We should be culturally flexible. And so some questions to ask yourself as we think about this. One question you can ask yourself is, what cultural preferences or what cultural norms, this would be like, it could have to do with how people dress, how people communicate, a style of music, a family dynamic. What cultural preference or norm do you hold on to too tightly? To the point that you expect anybody who follows Jesus to do it in that way, for it to look that way. This is a barrier to you reaching somebody for Christ. And it's a barrier that if you hope to reach somebody with the light and the life of the gospel, it's a barrier that needs to be removed. Why? Because we're called to embody the gospel with our lives within the framework of the people we're trying to reach. Or another way to ask this would be, do you assume somebody is now following Jesus simply because they've adopted a cultural norm or preference? Be careful, because that means that you might be making converts to your preferences or converts to your norms, your cultural norms, and not converts to Jesus. So these are just some things to keep in mind as we try to, by God's grace, reach others with the hope and the message of a God who did not stay far away from us, who did not keep us at arm's length, but instead did what? Became one of us so that he could win us back to himself. Hope this was helpful. See you Sunday.